I don't often say to myself, I love weather-related issues, but I got to be honest. Yesterday, the easiest part of the Bears game for me was the fact that where I live in the middle of Illinois, we were under severe thunderstorm and tornado watches all day yesterday. Thankfully, in my area, my neck of the woods, no damage, nothing too crazy. But about every 10 minutes during the Bears' absolute embarrassment versus Tampa Bay, you would get the breaking weather alert from KHQA CBS 2. And it was just, I'm Rich Kane, and here with the weather update as we continue our tornado watch for the area. And most of the time, I am the guy who's on Twitter absolutely destroying Rich Kane and saying, how dare how dare you, local weather person, ruin my viewing? But yesterday was, I think, the one time in my life I was like, thank God. I hope a tornado is about to come and land on my face and whip me off to Kansas and throw me back, and Toto can smack me in the mouth as we're swirling around in the vortex and knock me out of my misery for what I had to deal with yesterday. I swear to God, it was the only time I was thankful the local news continued to put me out of my misery. And then it would always cut back, and it would be like, Justin Fields drops back. Oh, not a shock that the Bears don't go max protection on a 3rd and 5, and they try to throw really predictable small slant and curl routes, not even getting 5 yards line of scrimmage, and Justin Fields gets strip sacked by Shaq Barrett. Oh, that's just my life right now. And
Classic.
Then 10 minutes later, KHQA news at 10. It's like, oh, just kill me now.
Look, as a man who's had to field a lot of calls from people like you, I'm glad I am not in that area because I would have had to discuss with you why it is important that we cut in for your local programming. But I'm glad that you were happy this week for it.
You know what? I normally am that guy who you have to be like, sir, you're acting like a buffoon. Stop calling the station. We're trying to make sure people don't die.
People's lives are at stake.
Yeah. But this week I was the guy. I would have been calling you and be like, thank you for keeping me safe and my children and the neighbors and my dog for making sure that there's a tornado watch. It was just what
in
it
a
was
way,
such a bad day.
Instead of protecting you from external harm, they were protecting you from self-harm in this instance. So they don't even realize how many lives they saved this past.
I also saw a great tweet from Barstool Carl from Barstool Chicago. It was so simple, but it was so poignant. And it was just like, I think the exact wording, I'm not 100%, but this basically the gist of it was like, it's not a drinking problem if it's happening during the Bears game. Like
I saw that. That was great.
It's like, hallelujah. That's what I was going through yesterday.
That is just the life of a Bears fan this season, and really over the past several.
I'm not even angry. I'm not even angry today. And you wait till we'll get to it. I'm not even angry. It's almost. It's turned into like sad. It's just sadness, like just despair.
Well, that brings us to that week 7 recap, which the despair was felt by pretty much a large majority of fan bases, including myself, who didn't have my team playing this past weekend.
That's a win,
man. It was hard. It was a win, but I had nothing then to distract me from just the slew of rough watches this week. I just felt like most of the games this week, Mark, were really not thoroughly entertaining. There were a couple, obviously, that were interesting and games that there were some awesome plays and some unique things to happen, but in terms of the whole week as a whole of these slated games, it was probably the most rough stretch that we've had so far this season. I don't know if you agree with that. But
yeah, I mean, we started the show basically saying that last week, but you're getting into this now, this matchup where this part of the season where for the next 3 or 4 weeks, you have teams that have a lot of injuries. You have teams that are coming off buys. You have teams that haven't hit buys yet. So it's a lot of like a well-rested team versus a really unhealthy team. You're going to get these wonky matchups like yesterday where a Bengals team is just feeling in an absolute groove right now, and they're clicking all cylinders versus a Ravens team that's coming off an emotional win after emotional win. So you have teams that are on all different levels, and so you're going to get a lot of these blowouts. You have it's just a weird matchup. You have teams that's a lot of cross divisions right now, cross conferences. It's a weird slate before you get back to that last 4 or 5 weeks in the NFL, where it goes back to just individual games as you're running towards getting those playoff seedings. So expect some more blowouts over the next couple weeks. Expect more teams to be like the Bears on their 4th string tackle. You're dealing with it. You saw it obviously Thursday night football, which I know we'll start with. So it's hard. I mean, football's still football. I loved watching, 10 hours of NFL football yesterday. The weird weather, we're getting in that as well. Cold, it's getting cold in the Midwest. And that means out in the Pacific, like Sunday night football is monsoons. And so it was just a weird, wild, up and down, unpredictable day. And yet you and I were 4-0 with our bets that we predicted on Friday on social media. So somehow we pulled that one together.
First time this season, I believe, that we went 4 for 4. So that is good news. Certainly reasons why you need to have us as your only source for any and all information, clearly.
Not if you're trying to put your kids through college. You don't want that.
I'm not going to recommend anything on that front. That's for sure. You mentioned the buys real quick. We had 6 teams on a buy this week. So for you fantasy football players out there, I feel your pain, as I had to start Jimmy G this week and lost by 2 points because of that final interception by Jimmy G. So
hey, I started Patrick Mahomes, and he did worse than Jimmy G. So
I had Patrick Mahomes and Sam Darnold in 2 different leagues this week, and both got under 5 points, I think. So fun time. But the Steelers, Chargers, Bills, Cowboys, Jaguars, and Vikings all on a bye this week. So no games from them. That's 3 games that we did not have. Still 12 to go through, however, as we get ready for Monday night coming up this evening. So as always, we'll start with the Thursday night game as we begin our recap here, Mark. The Browns hosting the Denver Broncos. Big game for really both teams going into this one, but the Broncos were trying to avoid, a 4-game skid after they were riding that losing streak, but they couldn't do it as the Browns minus several starters, including Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, able to pull out the win with Case Keenum under center and Ernest Johnson. What a story for this guy. I mean, he was that famously sent emails to AAF teams just asking for a tryout. Eventually gets on, practice squad this year, gets through the Browns and explodes for nearly 150 yards and a touchdown in this game. He was certainly the story of this one, but ultimately Broncos falling to 3-4 while the Browns survive another week to hang on to 4-3.
Yeah, the Browns are in a weird spot right now. I mean, Baker Mayfield, it's surgery is the only way that's going to get him healthy. But you got to say to yourself, if we have surgery, he's out for the whole year. It looks like there's like a break and a torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder, all stemming from that interception. And what's weird if you're a Browns fan is your team gutted out a win with a bunch of backups, and it was a culture win. I've talked a lot about the Browns this year. These aren't the same Browns. We just have to get more. We have to continue to train our brains to remind ourselves that for most of my life as a football fan, watching football, 31 years old, the Browns have been an easy write-off as an up and down and a roller coaster and a circus team. What they've built now in the last 2 years with Kevin Stefanski especially, it's just different. And you start to say to yourself, if we bring Baker Mayfield back, can we continue to game plan and just play like that Browns team? Because it takes the pressure off of Baker. It keeps Baker healthy and taking care of himself. And that's how Browns should win football games. The way they ran the ball, dominated the line of scrimmage, even with missing their starting tackles, even with backup running backs. Problem is, it just also is a weird spot. Baker's in a contract year. Baker's trying to prove it. It's a weird kind of up and down place for the Browns to be, but a great win for the Browns. And I feel like I'm a broken record with the Broncos right now. They just seem rudderless offensively, and they're a team that has a good defense that plays well. Now, the defense has an identity, but offensively, they just seem rudderless, and they just seem like they're drifting with no direction right now. A lot like the Panthers, a lot like the football team. And I don't know what the answer is, except for, do you just commit to Teddy Bridgewater and let him go through this, or do you try to find a spark with Drew Lock? I don't know what the answer is. I don't know when the Broncos bye week is. Maybe that'll help. They have the extra rest now with the Thursday Night Football. We'll see. But they just seem so rudderless right now.
Yeah, and when you can't hit on big plays or create splash plays, that's going to limit your offense, and that's really what the Denver Broncos are now. And I knew that they probably knew that going into the season when they made the decision to go with Teddy over Drew Lock. They valued taking care of the football over, some of those volatile weeks where maybe you can potentially put up 30 points, but you're going to get a couple interceptions. That's just the gamble they made. Now, the Broncos don't have their bye week, it looks like, for quite some time. It looks like in December. So we're going to definitely have to keep tabs on how the Broncos are, gonna kind of formulate their offense moving forward, because if they're going to just stick with what they've been doing, well, you've been completely, outscored 7 points to start their losing streak, 19, 24, and 14. I mean, that's not going to get you over the hump, especially when the defense, who was really good to start the year, has now been kind of teetering back. So that's going to be a problem for the Broncos. Meanwhile, I agree with you with the Browns. You'll take that win with all the issues and the injuries. That's something that you just got to take and move forward with. So good win for them. And, they keep pacing what's an extremely competitive AFC North, which we'll get to in just a moment. Washington football team go on the road to Lambeau. Not a very inspiring game either way, really. It's very, what you expect. Packers 14-point win, 24-10 over Washington. Aaron Rodgers was his usual efficient self in this game. They never really were struggling. It was 7-7 in the first quarter, and then after that, it was all Packers the rest of the way. So Aaron Rodgers, 3 touchdowns. Taylor Heineke, we were talking about this before the show, Mark, and I'll let you kind of expand on it. But he's just a guy where coming in, you're like, well, we're going to have an injured Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let's just see what we got in this young guy who played inspiring football in the playoff game last year.
Earned him a contract. I think it was a 3-year deal. He signed to be the backup in Washington.
Yep. And obviously the guy has some capability. I mean, he had 95 yards rushing in this game. He definitely is one of those guys that can get plays done with his legs. But, just the decision-making really hurt them in this one. And Washington never really able to get remotely competitive in this one.
Yeah, I think it's so obvious now. As soon as Fitzpatrick is healthy, you just go back to him, because you've learned with Taylor Heineke, and I think the whole of the NFL and Washington has learned this, and I think it's a good lesson to learn, is that this guy is a good backup quarterback. He would be a good backup for most teams where you need a spot starter or two to come in, even for just like a quarter. If your guy gets, tweak something, he's mobile. He can make most of the throws. He doesn't have a cannon. He's lively. He's not afraid to gunsling it a little bit. But at this point in time, he's just so raw, so young, that maybe in 3 or 4 more years, he's an even better, maybe like elite backup quarterback in this league. But I think if you're Washington and you want to try to salvage the season, the smartest thing to go back to now is go right back to Fitzpatrick, try to get that culture back, try to win games, and find that, because you want to be an attractive destination for free agents and for possible trades at this point in time for your quarterback position going forward. Their defense did play better in the first half, but again, when you play Aaron Rodgers, your defense had, like we talked about last week, the Bears. If you play Aaron Rodgers and your offense isn't great, your defense needs to be 85 Bears electric good for all 4 quarters, and that's asking way too much of any modern NFL defense, especially with the way the rules are today. So kudos to the Packers. Again, that's one of those games you circled at the beginning of the year. Is like, could this be a trouble set for the Packers? That defense is so good for Washington. But with the way these teams have, the trajectories have gone over the first 7 weeks, that's a great win for the Packers to just secure it. not too many injuries. I just saw like a couple minutes ago, actually, before we started, it could be Devontae Adams on a COVID reserve list. There's a lot of COVID stuff going through. Bears, obviously, their head coach. So that's maybe a little concern projecting forward. But for this game, great win for the Packers to just stay steady, get a W. No one's hurt, no one's injured too bad, and you just keep moving on and keep separating from the rest of the NFC North.
Yeah, Packers moved to 6-1. They're 3-0 at home this season, and Washington, meanwhile, falling to 2-5. So that NFC East picture is becoming clearer by the day. Meanwhile, we talked about it before with the Chiefs this year. If you're gonna want to beat a team as electric on offense like the Chiefs or the Packers, you got to get pressure with 4.
Yep.
And there was no team better suited to do that than Washington. They can't do it. And therefore, Packers able to shred you. So if you have to resort to blitzing and trying to confuse the guy, you're not going to win because you're just not going to pull it off. So that's been Washington's issue so far. And then obviously the offensive problems speak for themselves. Speaking of the Chiefs, they go on the road and get slaughtered essentially by the Tennessee Titans. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Yeah, it was just a 24-point win, whereas there were other much larger gaps this week. This seemed to be the biggest blowout in terms of expectation over what we got. Tennessee winning 27-3 over Kansas City. It's the first time in the Mahomes era that KC's been held without a touchdown. So that alone.
Besides the Super Bowl.
Well, except, yes, yeah, a regular season game, I should say. So that certainly is a huge factor in explaining the story right there, that one stat. And then Tannehill, very efficient, kind of a resurgence for him against obviously one of the most vulnerable secondaries in the league. A.J. Brown exploited that as well. So all in all, Titans really, putting the foot down and exerting their presence on the league and on the Chiefs. Meanwhile, Kansas City now in a tailspin, Mark, and this is getting to a point where we can't really ignore it anymore. This is not the same offense that we're used to seeing. It's a turnover machine at this point.
Well, Dan, I just got to be honest. It's one of those things for me where you're just so dumbfounded by what we're seeing versus what we expected. And it's hard for us all to wrap our brains around it. And we got to remember, there were times in Aaron Rodgers' career post that Super Bowl in 11 where, I think it was in 13, they went like 8-7-1, but he was a little banged up. Like those times that Rodgers in those first couple of years post Super Bowl didn't, perform well or didn't, automatically just go out and win a bunch of games, get to 11 wins, get to 12 wins, whatever it may be, or just easily still win his division. It was always because Aaron was injured. And then there was that slog of Aaron's career where it was, he had 2 or 3 years, was injured, the Shea McClellan year with the collarbone and another collarbone injury. And then there was the infighting with Mike McCarthy. And now it's completely turned around over the past, 3 years with LaFleur. And so it's not uncommon for us to just say to ourselves, best quarterback talent. So obviously they're just going to run away with their division. But this is something like we haven't seen in years. Because even with Tom Brady over all those years in New England, the expectation was, they're always going to win. And even if Tom wasn't like his electric self, none of the other teams in the division were good enough to really compete with them. But what we're seeing now is this weird influx of a non-injured Patrick Mahomes. So he's just not playing well. And you have to say, honestly, he is not playing well. 17 turnovers in 7 games. And you combine that with the fact that overall, the defense is just not good enough. The general manager has to take some blame for not rebuilding the defense. They did a good job rebuilding the offensive line and focusing on the offense, but they did not do a good enough job with that defense and getting real depth for that defensive line, especially to create pressure. And then coupled with the fact that you have 2 teams in that division with the Chargers and the Raiders that seem to really have things going in the right direction and playing better football, not necessarily elite football, but really solid, better football with good quarterback play. It's just like something I just don't know if I remember seeing this for. I don't remember a Colts team where Peyton Manning was healthy and they were struggling and they, you know what I mean? Like losing in division. It's just hard.
Outside of his rookie year, I guess.
Yeah. But like, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around. And so it is really, really weird. It's really, really fascinating. And I think there's a couple factors that I'll throw it to you. I think one of the major things is I think there's some complacency. I think the Chiefs got really complacent in the off seasons. I think this has been a large wake-up call. And the problem is in the NFL, it's different from the NBA. It's different from baseball and other sports. It is much harder to make those changes in season. It is much harder to revamp things in season, even with trades and stuff like that. The playbooks are different. The languages are different. Injuries are it's just different from the MLB and the NBA in that way. And so I think there's some real and I the other thing is I just think that you add that complacency in with a quarterback who is just not seeing things right now. And I think the pressure, so first time we can say outside pressure, inside pressure, whatever, it's starting to get to this kid a little bit, and he's just not performing what we expect him to perform. It is a weird thing. I can't pinpoint it. I'm here in Chiefs country on the border of Missouri. We are a Chiefs station when I broadcast there at my day job. So I have some big Chiefs fans here and sports people in the area that I'm going to try and pick their brains this week and try to get it and get more information, because I don't know. It's hard to watch. And the fact that when they lost, last thing I'll say, I know I'm ranting here, but the last thing I'll say is when they lose, but they're just scoring a bunch of points and they lose, it's easy to say, oh, the defenses are playing well. They're only scored 3 points. And so that's the concern. Like, that is, to me, the red alarms, like, woo, 5-alarm fire. I'm okay if you lose the Titans in Tennessee 33-30, but you lost and you only scored 3 points. That is a massive concern.
It's the turnovers that's the biggest problem for them. I agree that there's probably some complacency for sure. I think also it's, how you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Now it's eventually catching up to the team. I mean, he's been a gunslinger his whole career. We've known that. That's just how they play football. And now you're getting to a point where, okay, well, defenses are starting to figure you guys out a little bit more, but you're not changing anything. So at this point, I mean, this is what the Titans and a lot of teams have been able to successfully do against them this year. The Titans have one of the lowest blitz percentages in the league, and they continued that last week. I mean, they got pressure with 4. They put, 7 back in coverage, and they're going to bracket Tyreek Hill. They're going to, try and hover the middle of the field and cover Travis Kelce. And they're going to make other guys be the ones that beat you, the Byron Pringles, the Mecole Hardmans. I mean, Pringle was the leading receiver yesterday, and that wasn't, by accident. This is what Tennessee wanted to make them do. You couple that with their inability over the past few years to be able to run the football. Well, they haven't had to worry as much about that lately because they were so good in the other areas and in the run game alternatives, such as the short screens and some of these other ways that they kind of manufacture runs, they've been good at. But now that's not working, and now would be a great time to be able to rely back on a traditional run game and be able to actually, get some drives moving again.
Dan. It's a great point.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing that's really affecting them right now. And I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming back is really going to be able to change that, because he hasn't been particularly effective or great since they drafted him in the first round last year. So their problems are multiple. They spent a lot of money on the O-line. The O-line's not playing up to that level. And because of all that money being spent on the offensive side of the ball, we're seeing those weaknesses now become magnified on defense. They got Chris Jones back. We thought maybe they'd be better in that front.
And he's just got paid a lot of money.
Yep. He got paid a lot of money. And I know that, the box score is not everything, but he had 1 tackle in this game. So, they're gonna need stuff to happen on defense for sure, but the offense needs to figure itself out, because that's what their identity is supposed to be. And Andy Reid said it yesterday, we don't know what we are yet. That's a problem midway through.
It is a huge problem. And I didn't talk about Tennessee, but I'll quickly say And Tennessee deserves a lot of credit. Great game plan. Exactly what you said. Make the others beat us. And right now, I think teams like a Tennessee, teams like the Buffaloes, teams like Baltimore, who have all beaten Kansas City this year, who are the other elite teams going into it, Chargers. There's enough blood in the water with Kansas City right now. Who's afraid of Kansas City right now? No one. And that was part of the thing that made them so dangerous the last 2 years, is that you were just scared of them. You were scared coming in, and they were going to just run the score up on you, just hit the X button, run the touchdown play like it's Madden, and you were going to get embarrassed. And right now, they've lost that swagger. There's blood in the water. You can tell they're all a little dazed and confused, and they just don't know what's going on. And credit to some of these other AFC teams, they're taking advantage of it. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't. It's only week 7. But right now, the Chiefs are a massive disappointment. They're completely underachieving, and they deserve to be criticized this strongly. I firmly believe that. We all, I said it to begin the season. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. Remember, we talked about it. It was one of the podcasts right before we started the season. What if the Chiefs underperform this year? What if that, what is that narrative? We talked about that. And what if they only win one Super Bowl in this whole run with the, how many guys they have on the ESPN Top 100 and all these things? We were so quick to anoint them. And in a lot of ways, rightfully so, because they almost went to 3 straight Super Bowls. But they have really, really fallen off the wagon pretty hard this year. And it is hard to wrap our heads around that this is like the new normal with Kansas City, because it happened so quickly.
Yeah, it's been a rapid decline. And that's the part of the reason I had them as the 4 seed coming into the year was just I wasn't sure how they were going to be able to stack up against the rest of the league, as the rest of the league is continuing to get better. And they're plateauing at this point. Now I had them at 12-5. They already have 4 losses. So where are they going to end up at the season's end? I mean, they got to turn it around real quick if they want to actually make the playoffs, let alone, try and win the division or anything like that. They got to just set their sights on winning next week against the Giants, for crying out loud. And then after that, Mark, I mean, it's not an easy slate. They have the Packers, then the Raiders, then the Cowboys. I mean, those are potentially 3 losses right there. So this team's got to figure it out, and it's got to figure it out fast. Let's move to another game that's actually high scoring. Maybe we didn't anticipate it. I certainly didn't, but the Falcons end up winning in a game winner from Younghoe Koo. That guy is just dynamite, right? He might be the second best kicker in the league next to Justin Tucker. That guy's been incredible.
I picked him up. I would, to my own horn, I picked him up on fantasy this week. He was available in my league. I had my kicker was the Buffalo Bills kicker, Bass, because they score so many points. And I think he was the 3rd or 2nd highest, point kicker in fantasy. And then I'm like, oh, well, Younghoe Koo's available. Pick him up just because Bass was on a bye. I might just stick with Koo. What a week.
What a week. He bangs through the 36-yarder for the winner. They were down 28-27. They win 30-28 over Miami. The injury news come out of Miami. Jason McCourty and Malcolm Brown are likely headed to IR with injuries. But outside of that, it was the return of Tua. And Tua looked pretty good overall. Yeah. He threw 4 touchdowns in this game, but did throw 2 picks that were very they came at very bad times, and they weren't good throws. But the Falcon, Kyle Pitts was a big story in this one. He set, a couple NFL records for receiving yards in his first 7 games for a rookie tight end. And that guy's made, quite an impact early on for the Falcons. But, your early takeaways from this game, in which the Falcons now got themselves to 500, and where the Dolphins now sit at 1-6, which is just a crazy turnaround from where they were headed the past 2 seasons. A constant improvement has now turned into a decline, if not just a massive collapse.
Yeah, the Dolphins they're hard. Again, they're hard to figure out. It so happens so quickly for a team that was doing all the right steps. You know what I mean? Like, this was the year now they were supposed to just make the playoffs. And the next year it's like you win a playoff game. Like, they were on that trajectory, and it's just the bottom has fallen out. For Tua at this point in time, I think I said it last week or a couple weeks ago. all he has to do at this point in time is just he's got to try to put good tape out there. I mean, that's where his career is at this point in time. He's just trying to got to put good tape out there. They didn't lose because of Tua. He didn't help them win. Those interceptions were very bad. But again, this was a team a lot like the Broncos, a lot like the football team that was supposed to dominate you with defense and then play a control the ball type of style. You don't want Tua throwing the ball that many times. Again, you're asking. I get so mad at offenses, and I'll talk about the Bears in just a minute. You have to coach the game plan for the players and the personnel that you have, and your offense for the football team, for the Dolphins, for the Broncos. Like, your teams are built to do what the Browns did on Thursday night: keep the game low scoring, control the clock, and run the bleep out of the football. And they're not doing that. And they're asking their quarterback, who's inexperienced, young, and has not a lot of confidence right now, to go out there and try to win games. Shout out to the Falcons. They have found a way to stay frisky. And right now, the NFC is kind of a mess. The division leaders are pulling away, except for like the West with the two teams. But there's two wild card spots that are going to be very up for grabs in the NFC right now. And the Falcons, kudos to them. They're finding a way to claw into that in the hunt picture. Matt Ryan having a really solid year right now. And if his defense can just make a play or two like they did on those interceptions, the Falcons are hanging around. So kudos to them. And the Dolphins, they're a mess right now. They're bottoms out. I don't know.
What can you say about them? You know, it's been now several weeks in a row of defense not living up to its, the billing. We've had inconsistency from the run game with Myles Gaskin, and now they lose Malcolm Brown too. You didn't have Tua, so you kind of gave them a break, but then he comes back and plays well, and you still lose. So there are a multitude of problems, and from coming in quickly thinking Brian Flores was making an immediate impact and that he was going to be the next really good head coach, all of a sudden now we're left talking, is he on the hot seat? And he very well might be, which is crazy to think considering where we were, just a season ago with the thought process on his, future.
He was supposed to be the Belichick disciple that actually worked. Yeah. And now it's falling apart. And you know what? I got to be honest. When you fall to 1-6 and you're losing games like this, I get it. Your personnel maybe, but if you're a good head coach, I mean, you don't let this happen. Like, it just doesn't fall apart that way. When you've been part of the building, it's hard to say is Robert Saleh, is Dan Quinn, the new rookie head coaches. They're inheriting messes and they're trying to build on the fly. They get the leash for me to say, I don't know yet if they're good or not. For Brian Flores, you've been there. This is your third year. You built something, and now you've let it fall out. You've let the chaos. You've let the whispers of the trade rumors fall in and ruin this team, whatever it may be that is. So I have to put that blame on you, just like I will with the Bears head coach here in a moment as well.
Yeah. And meanwhile, if the season were to end today, the Falcons, the 8th seed, so they're one win away. I mean, they're tied with the Minnesota Vikings in terms of record for getting a playoff spot, which is, wild considering their slow start this season. All right. The Jets go on the road in an AFC East showdown with the Patriots. And my goodness, I mean, we knew Bill Belichick's record was very lopsided when it comes to facing rookie quarterbacks. But this one takes the cake. 54-13 romp over the New York Jets. New England just had an answer for everything. They were not letting up in this game at all. And the last time the Jets gave up 50-plus points, with how bad this team has been, the last time they gave up 50-plus points was back in the 70s to the Patriots as well. So we're talking about kind of an all-time meltdown.
That's a great stat. I know it. That's crazy.
Pretty crazy. Zach Wilson obviously gets injured late in this one. It appears to be a PCL tear, which would definitely put him on IR and potentially make him miss up to 2 months. So not good news there, obviously, for a team that really needed to get the reps for its young quarterback. But really, Mac Jones looking very good in this game. The Patriots all around buttoned up. And, we expected a win, but I'm not sure we expected this Patriots team to be capable of scoring 54 points. So that's really what impressed me the most.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to sing too many praises because against the Jets. So listen, it was my lock of the week. The Patriots to cover the 6.5. When the Patriots lost the way they did versus the Cowboys, you just knew the Jets coming into town, it was going to be a rough day for them against a Bill Belichick coach team. But you know what? I think this is a really good win for the Patriots because of this main reason. These are games, if you're a Pats fan, you're supposed to win. Not only did they win it, they absolutely demolished the Jets. They embarrassed the Jets. So that feels good to say, hey, our organization, even though we're on a bumpy track right now, is still light years ahead of the trash that is the Jets. And so that's got to feel good. For the Jets organization, I mean, if there's one thing you would have told me would have been a nightmare for the Jets, like absolute nightmare for them this year, would have been starting Zach Wilson from day one and then him missing a bunch of time. Because now, a lot like Tua last year, getting injured, like now you're just going to have to go into next year again with not the whole point of starting a rookie from day one and letting him start 17 games. A lot like Joe Burrow last year is like, you just want the guy to get all the experience in the world. You're not going to judge him too harsh. So that way, year 2 and year 3, you can really say, hey, now wait a minute. You shouldn't be doing this. Look at all the experience you got. Haven't you been watching the films? Why do you keep making these same mistakes? So this is a nightmare scenario for them. And you just don't like to see a guy get injured. So that really sucks. And we'll see what the Jets can do with another young quarterback who's got no experience.
That blew my mind that this team didn't find a way to bring in a veteran quarterback. I mean, you have a younger guy backing up your young rookie quarterback. That even just from a planning purposes does not seem conducive at all. I mean, you need a guy in that room to help mentor him and stuff.
We've said it. You and I both said that over and over again on this show for sure.
Yeah, I mean the Chase Daniels and things like that are very important.
Or bring someone in there who has knowledge of the position to give just a little tidbit here and there. And good luck. They got to find something now to shore up that room if he's going to be on IR and miss, as you said, possibly a month or two. They should bring someone.
They're on the fast track now to the number 1 pick easily. So.
Could be.
We'll see how that turns out. Panthers go on the road at the Giants, much like the Broncos.
I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hey, look, Sam Darnold was benched in the second half. He's just not been playing well at all. I mean, it's just case in point. The first 3 weeks of the season, they go 3-0. Things are looking good. And now they've dropped 4 in a row. And it's not, a lot of it's not making sense. Obviously, the Christian McCaffrey injury has sorely hurt this team.
Yeah.
But with the weapons they have, it shouldn't be as big of an issue. I don't want to absolve Darnold of any of the issues because he's obviously had some terrible moments. But the O-line has been brutal as well. And that, they've had to constantly shake up the rotation week in and week out. They had the rookie starting at left tackle this week. The Giants had 6 sacks in this game, though, and Carolina's averaging 4 sacks allowed a game. I mean, that's not a recipe for success by any step of the imagination. And then on top of that, you're pairing that with a brand new quarterback to your system and a guy who's trying to get comfortable. And then you're also pairing that with receivers that aren't living up to their reputations and dropping passes. It's a perfect storm right now for the Carolina Panthers. But they go on the road and play a Giants team that's having a really rough year as well, looking very disjointed, and they put up 25, and it's 25-3 victory. Carolina just all out of sorts here. And look, Matt Rule didn't necessarily mince words afterwards. I mean, he committed to the fact that, okay, Sam's our quarterback, but he was harsh on him and talked about how he needs a lot more out of Sam. And then, of course, the reports come out afterwards that Carolina is very much in talks in the Deshaun Watson trade sweepstakes. Look, Carolina should be in the sweepstakes for any quarterback because, yes, they committed early draft picks from this past season to get Sam Darnold. But in terms of the long game, they haven't committed to the guy. I mean, he is an expendable resource that they have. So with that being said, at this point, this is a team that needs to be thinking about the future much sooner rather than later because it is appearing – I know we're only 7 games into the season and 7 games into the Sam Darnold Panthers experience, but already it seems like we're getting a fairly clear picture of what this is actually looking like. Yes, I was high on them coming in. My bold prediction was them to win the division. Felt good about that the first month of the season. Now it's looking like they're going to have a very difficult time even getting to 500 the way they're playing. Their defense is still really good, but having inopportune moments, and then obviously the offense has issues across the board, and it starts with the quarterback. So yeah, I'm not sure where they go from here, because the only solution is getting Christian McCaffrey back healthy. That's really the only thing that I can see that's going to help this team right now.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this is a lot like, a little bit what I had with the Chiefs, in the sense is I'm okay with you losing in overtime to a Vikings team 34-28. You're scoring, your defense is beat up right now. You lose your first round pick. Like, yeah, your defense is going to give up points, but you're on the road against a Giants team that's not playing good football, and you can only muster 3 points. And it's a lot. Like I'm about to talk about my Bears. It's just unacceptable in today's NFL. And when you have performances like that, it makes you turn over every rock and look at every nook and cranny and say, what the bleep's going on here? Because that's like dysfunction at a big level. I think a lot falls on the quarterback, obviously, but you also, I think, have to look at the coaching staff. You have to look at the preparation that goes into a week like that. How do you get to the point where you're playing that bad of football and you've let it spiral out of control like this? It's only fair. Now, in the Giants' standpoint, a really great win for them as a team that desperately needed a win. The Giants are the worst franchise record-wise since I think like 2017 or 2016, something like that. If you look at it, I mean, they have been bad, and they are one of those historically great franchises, and they've been down for a long time. And we all have our questions about Daniel Jones and Joe Judge right now. But to get a win like that at home against a team that's reeling and to really just kind of step on their throats, that's got to feel good. And hopefully, if you're a Giants team, you can build some momentum out of that. Daniel Jones is such an anomaly, man. Like, he's athletic. I love his abilities. That catch he made, like, it's so weird. And yet then you just don't get the production out of it. And you still get a lot of the bad turnovers and weird plays. So it's a lot of what young quarterbacks, there's just question marks all over right now. But a good win for the Giants, and the Panthers should just be Panthers fans should be pretty disgusted right now. Losing a lot of winnable games, and then you got the Cardinals coming up in a couple weeks, the Patriots coming up in a couple weeks. Doesn't get easier, and it looks like that the thoughts of the playoffs are slipping very quickly.
They've dropped 4 in a row now, 3-4. Giants now 2-5, tied for second place in the NFC East.
Hey-o.
That just shows you right there what state that's in. The Cowboys didn't even play this week, Mark, and they have a 3-game lead in that division. Yeah. So that tells you all you need to know right now about the state of the NFC East. The Bengals go on the road, and what may be, one of the more entertaining games, even albeit a lopsided one, was just Joe Burrow and the Bengals taking it to the Ravens in Baltimore. They have now won in Pittsburgh and in Baltimore. This is a different Bengals team than we've used to seeing. And I know they tweeted after the game, are you all taking notice now? And I think that's a fair thing, because they have put the league on notice at this point. I mean, 41-17 win over a Ravens defense. That is real. It's a really good defense. It really is. And maybe they're a little overrated, but they're still a good defense. And then on the flip side, the Bengals defense, underrated as well, as they hold Lamar and company to just 17 points. They now sit atop the AFC North, Mark, and Joe Burrow puts up over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, not to mention Jamar Chase, who nearly sets a rookie record for like just performance in a game. He had 200 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, and, the debates about Penei Sewell, how they should have drafted him, I think people are now starting to understand why they took Jamar Chase and how big of a difference he can make, and how big of an impact he can make. He has 754 yards receiving, which is the most by any player in NFL, any rookie in NFL history through the first 7 games, breaking a record set by Harlan Hill in 1954.
A lot of people are saying this morning that, I don't want to take this too hard against the Ravens. They've had an emotional couple weeks. They've been on a roll. I mean, since that week 1 loss against the Raiders. And, they were maybe due for a letdown spot, and the Bengals are hungrier. I don't know. You just got spanked at home against a division rival who you and the Steelers are the big boys in that division. It's very separate, like how much they're the big boys in that division. It's not like the NFC North where it's like it's just the Packers are the only ones who have the right to say we're the big boys in the division. The Steelers and the Ravens both deserve to claim that, like, hey, we own the other 2 teams in our division. And they came in and spanked you. To me, it is a concerning loss for Baltimore just because I thought Baltimore was more mentally tough than that. I thought Lamar and the organization with Harbaugh were the type of team that if they were going to lose the Bengals, it was going to be fourth quarter. It's close. Joe Burrow makes a drive and maybe the defense makes one play against Lamar on a 4th and 5 and they get a sack. And it's a close game, but man, oh man, they got spanked. And so that I am concerned about the Ravens a little bit after this loss. I will say for the Bengals, I don't know yet if I'm ready to say this is a first-class Super Bowl team on the Super Bowl plane, but I will say it is really fun to watch a team really embody what their leader brings. Joe Burrow it deserves to be in the conversation as a top 10 quarterback in this league right now. He is absolutely playing in top 10 quarterback football right now. Him and Justin Herbert, what a draft class it's starting to look like. Tua in the middle of those 2 guys. That's brutal.
That's crazy.
I mean, he really is that. I'm so glad this injury he tore ACL, MCL, cartilage. I mean, a brutal knee injury, and it hasn't slowed him down from being an aggressive player who plays with swagger, who plays with energy, and is absolutely on the same page with his weapons. And the Bengals have a lot of weapons. Can they sustain it? The Bengals also lost to the Bears this year at home. So I'm not ready to anoint them, but they're playing really good football. They're playing really confident football right now. And Zach Taylor deserves a round of applause. I mean, Zach Taylor, they stuck it with them through some bad years, and it seemed to maybe paying off that continuity, offensive mind with his young quarterback in this offensive. They're an offensive juggernaut right now, and it's fun to watch.
You talk about Kansas City not being scared to face them. I think a lot of teams are going to be scared to face the Cincinnati Bengals, given that they put up a 50 burger on you.
They're playing with house money
every week. They really are.
House money right now.
Absolutely. Both teams 5-2 now. And as I mentioned, Cincinnati now taking over that first spot in the AFC North. So this will be a fun race to see in the whole conference, really. The NFC is kind of a mess. The AFC really shaping up to be a really fun race to the finish here, especially in that division. All right, Mark, let's get to the first of the afternoon games being the Bears at the Bucks. And, last year we talked about how Tampa was really shocked by how Chicago stepped up and really took it to them. Well, it's the opposite this year. Tom Brady throws 4 touchdown passes in a rout of Chicago, another 3-point game from a team this week. The Bears managed just a field goal. Bucks put up 38, and Tom Brady all over the Bears defense this time around. And it didn't look good for Justin Fields and company. Just a rough outing all in all for Chicago.
Well, I mean, the news comes out today. Your head coach now tests positive for COVID. There was some COVID stuff throughout the week going on with the Bears. Their offensive line at the tackle position is possibly the worst situation in the league right now, even worse than Cleveland's, who's on 2 backup tackles, because at least their backups are quality NFL players. I mean, the Bears, they're just a mess, absolute mess. And the problem is a game like this, I go back to like I did versus that Browns loss. When you lose a game like this, it once again takes out the magnifying glass towards all of the things that go wrong with your organization and that have been wrong with your organization. The Bears lost the game to the Tampa Bay Bucks when the schedule was released because their general manager, Ryan Pace, has done a piss-poor job of making sure there is quality depth at positions of need on this team. The Chicago Bears are spending $15 million on Tariq Cohen. Hasn't played it down since like week 4 of last year. They signed him after the injury because he is so important to Matt Nagy's incredibly special offense. The Bears are paying their backup tight end, who is on COVID list this week with Jimmy Graham, $9 million because he's so special to Matt Nagy's very unique, important offense. The same offense that has scored less than 20 points in more than half of Matt Nagy's games as a head coach for the Chicago Bears. And yet, your 4th-round running back from Virginia Tech, Khalil Herbert, once again has an incredible week running the football behind a piss-poor offensive line at the tackle position. An okay offensive line, guard, center, guard. Probably in the top 12 if you go guard, center, guard positions when healthy in the NFL. So pretty solid up front, but the tackles are so bad, so pathetic. And yet you cannot sign players, and you have to get Jason Peters, who's way past his prime, for like less than the veteran minimum, because you had to cut a Kyle Fuller, you had to do all these things because of you're paying Andy Dalton $10 million, pay Nick Foles $15 million.
Jimmy Graham, got to keep him.
It leads to all of those questions that I went on the rant 3 weeks ago against the Browns. So I don't need to totally rehash that. So it brings up that the Bears lost this game when the schedule came out because their incompetent GM, who has found some gems in the draft, don't get me wrong, he has found some gems, which is maddening because that's what keeps their jobs for just that extra week.
You found a good 5th-round player.
Yeah, that Justin Fields falls to them. That Khalil Herbert is a steal in the 4th round. That David Montgomery turns out really well. That Darnell Mooney's a steal in the 7th round. You
Tariq
get all these
Cohen years ago. Yeah.
So that's maddening. And then you lost the game when the schedule came out, but you got blown out and embarrassed because your head coach and your offensive staff does not understand how to coach in the modern NFL with a mobile quarterback. And they only know a system of plays that have to be run fucking perfect every time to have a chance to get 4 yards on a 3rd and 5. That's their offensive system, and it's embarrassing. And it is so maddening to me that I can watch the Jaguars have really cool design runs for Trevor Lawrence in the red zone to rush touchdowns in. And then I watch Justin Fields, who's arguably way more athletic than Trevor Lawrence, not have any design runs, whether it's the red zone or not. And again, it just goes to show it's a system that is so poorly coached and designed for the talent that they have. Well, the question, real quick though, the question is, when does this system work? Because they've done it now with multiple different skilled quarterbacks with different skill sets. The Andy Daltons, the Nick Foles, the Trubisky's. It hasn't worked with any of these guys. So who does it work with? And again, it's a great way to end my rant is that, again, when you lose a game like this, that's what it all comes up. That's what's so frustrating and maddening. And I think the final point of the Bears, where I make a quick point in Tampa, is that the one time it did work is when Bill Lazor was allowed to completely have control, and they ran the ball and they brought in that. Remember, I said my favorite thing, it was getting me like turned on. It was like 64 is eligible. You're not hearing that anymore. So what is Nagy doing? Why have they gotten away from that? Again, lose the game, but lose the game with dignity and a plan. You're getting embarrassed because you don't have a plan, you don't have an identity, and your scheme sucks. And for Tampa, again, I don't want to take too much of them embarrassing a bad Bears team, but this Tampa team is good. This Tampa team should be the favorites to win the Super Bowl right now. I think it's pretty obvious. They're on fire. Tom looks absolutely terrific. As long as they stay healthy at their weapons and they can get their corners back, their offense is just clicking at a different level right now. It's scary good. And the Bears led the league in sacks going into that game, and they couldn't sniff Brady. Yeah. They couldn't sniff him. So kudos to them. And for the Bears, again, losses like this make fans like me go extra crazy because, again, I know we're going to lose to Tampa because my GM sucks at putting a roster together. But now we get blown out, embarrassed on national TV because my head coach cannot commit an actual game plan that uses what you have versus what they have. It's just a shitty system that's never done anything. And I can't wait for Mitch Trubisky to start for the Washington football team next year and go 10-7 and be a Pro Bowler and lead them to the playoffs. And just be like, dear God, I'm living in a simulation. I might jump off a bridge.
This is my nightmare. Yeah. This is the Bucs go to 6-1. And to that point about Tampa being a scary team, they're getting healthier now on defense. They had Antoine Winfield back. They did have Levante David injured, which, so they were able to do that without
Jack Barrett
him.
Looked great.
Jack Barrett looked great. Tristan Wirfs is probably the best tackle, regardless of left or right, in the entire league. He's amazing.
Dude is a stud.
And then on top of that all, they are now running the football like they did in the postseason, because last year, regular season, they couldn't run the football with any consistency. Now they're getting that out of Leonard Fournette, and now they know what they are. They're a Leonard Fournette leading the way and then bringing in Ronald Jones to spell him time. They figured out the rotation, and it's working. So
it is.
This is scary, and now Tampa is really becoming that force, not just in the division, because right now they're obviously on that fast track to take care of the NFC South easily. But really the NFC in general, making a push really for that one seed. They're right there with the Cardinals and the Rams. It's probably going to go down to the final 2 weeks of the season before we know how this is going to shake out. So
I will say this. I really hope that the Bears, the McCaskies interviewed Byron Leftwich for the head coaching job before they left Tampa. That way they can at least make the trip somewhat productive.
Right.
And I really do. I am really excited to see Matt Nagy's not allowed to be in the facility for 10 days. So that's cool. I'm excited about that. What does that look? What does the Bears team look like when Matt Nagy only can try to ruin things from Zoom for 10 days? And maybe Bill Lazor gets to be the pseudo offensive coach, pseudo head coach for a week. And, or maybe Sean Desai, the young defense coordinator, maybe let him have the message for a week. And God, I can only pray to the gods that maybe that does something, and they run some option routes, and they have some creativity.
The ever optimist, Mark Hespin, everybody. That's good. I like it. Like to hear it. Let's move on to the Eagles and the Raiders game.
Do we have to?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we do.
No, the Raiders playing good football.
They are. They are playing well. They are now 2-0 post Gruden resignation, and there is something to be said for that. Without having a clear leader atop, to bring everyone together. The Raiders win 33-22. It wasn't the prettiest of games over the Philadelphia Eagles, and of course, the Eagles are a team with a lot of issues across the board. So it's not like you're not patting the Raiders on the back for beating a really troubled team, but they got what they needed to get done. And now Las Vegas is 5-2, atop of the AFC West.
Yeah.
Midway through the season, which is something that they are taking advantage of the games they should win. Whereas the Broncos are, after their strong starter falling off, the Chiefs falling off, the Vegas Raiders are staying consistent. And there's something to be said for that. Derek Carr is playing the best football in that division outside of Justin Herbert right now. So
31 of 34, 324 something yards. I mean, I said it 2 weeks ago when the Gruden thing got fired. Derek Carr is honestly earning himself an opportunity to get a big 5-year deal, an extension, and say, you're the face of this franchise, just right this ship. And he is stepping up to this challenge and playing very good football. Derek Carr is playing top 10 quarterback play. I mean, there's a lot of guys I feel like, as many guys we have questions about, the Tuas, the Justin Fields, a lot of these younger quarterbacks. There are some guys who are really stepping up and playing great football. And Derek Carr is one of them. I've just been absolutely blown away with. And so kudos to them for finding ways to win games again. They're supposed to. They're at home against a bad Eagles team, win the game by 11 points. Bada bing, bada boom. Move on to next week's stack of W. For the Eagles, I'll say, Ken, I just don't understand asking Jalen Hurts to throw the ball 34 times. they just don't understand what coaches are doing in the sense of lose with an identity. There's no identity to making Jalen Hurts throw 34 times. There's no identity to making Justin Fields and all these young quarterbacks lose with the identity. Go in with a game plan to try to help them. And Miles Sanders, 6 carries, 30 yards. I just don't get it. And now, Scott is another decent back, only 7 carries, 24 yards. He gets the touchdown. I just don't understand. Have an identity and lose with some pride and dignity to help to figure out, can the guy play or not? I don't know if Jalen Hurts can play when you're asking him to throw the ball 34 times and you're not giving him any running help. I just don't get it.
Yeah, and the part of the reason is they're not having a whole lot of success doing much of anything. You know, Sanders did eventually get carted off with a sprained ankle, but it seems like he's going to be fine. They expect him to be back as early as next week, so they avoided a major thing there. But that's been the case all season, where Miles Sanders is not being he's clearly the most talented player on that offense. Outside of, maybe if you want to throw in someone like who has the ability of Devontae
Smith. Yeah,
absolutely. And Goddard's a very good, capable tight end. But Sanders, has that elusiveness, that ability to be a really I imagine if Sanders was the Chase Edmonds role in Arizona, that would be perfect for him. It'd be a great spot for him to go. He's just not getting the type of run that he needs to show off his skill set, and that is a problem. But like you said, and you've said this in episodes past, it's about winning the games that are supposed to be games that you win, right? I mean, the ones that you check at the beginning of the season, say these are the ones that we are expected to come away victorious. And so that's all you can ask, and they got it done. And speaking of that, will bring us to the next game of winning the games that you're just supposed to win.
Yeah.
Not the prettiest of ways, but the Rams took care of business at home over the Lions in what was a dual revenge game for Jared Goff facing his former team, Matthew Stafford facing his former team. And in this case, Stafford won out, 3 touchdown passes in this one, 28-41 for 334 yards. And they took care of business, a 28-19 victory over the Lions. Just too much inaccuracy at times from Jared Goff. And the Rams are able to intercept him twice. He had a really bad one late where they were driving and got to make this one close in the red zone and gets picked off by Jalen Ramsey there. That seemed to be the turning point of the whole game. But at the end of the day, the Rams now moved to 6-1, and it was extremely important that they did because we'll get to the next game. But the Cardinals won, so the Rams need to keep pace there, and they did so. They're now 6-1 with the Cardinals 7-0 right above them. But yeah, I mean, it was all around still a game that you saw fight from the Lions once again, but they're at the end of the day, they're 0-7.
So I'll say this about the Lions. I'm starting to get to the point now where, I don't think Jared Goff should have any real reasons not to be the starter next year. A lot with his contract, what they gave up to get him, and I just don't know what the quarterback landscape's like. He's got no offensive weapons. They have no different makers on the wide receiver position. And I get it. He had them, a lot of them in LA, and he wasn't always great at times. He still was a little turnover prone. But I'm finding it hard to be too critical on Jared Goff with the playmakers that he does not have on the wide receiver position in Detroit. And I would, a lot of it's going to depend on how the next 10 games go for the Lions. The Lions, certainly, I do think will get a win or 2, possibly 3 here. I don't, there are wins out there available in the schedule coming on up. It's still a brutal schedule. We talked about that ad nauseum, but I don't want to sit here and be too critical of Jared Goff. I love that they went on the 2 fake punts. I thought Dan Campbell was like as Jesse the Ace Ventura in fucking Predator 1 with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he's got the Gatling gun and he's just like, he's just like, and everyone's looking like, I ain't got time to bleed. He's just like, he's trying everything in his power to get a W. And I give him a lot of credit in that regard. They just don't have enough talent. And I hope the organization does not over panic in that way. The fans are allowed to be the fans, but from the outside perspective, that's what I hope. And for the Rams, you're absolutely right. Win a game you're supposed to, keep pace, because you're really 2 games back of Arizona. You need them to lose, and you need to beat them again the next time you play them, because your one loss is the head-to-head. So keeping pace with Arizona is huge. And Matthew Stafford, again, just playing really great football right now, and it's fun to watch this Rams team.
It really is, and it's really fun to watch the Cardinals too. And that brings us to that game, which we probably don't need to spend a whole lot of time on because it's what we've seen every single week this season. Cardinals put a hurting on the Houston Texans 31-5, which ding, 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 scoreagami, the 1,068th unique score in NFL history. Never happened before until yesterday. But yeah, I mean, it was once again a Kyler Murray show. They ran the ball well, which they really do. That's kind of been the thing that's been under the radar all season long, is that they've actually been extremely effective at running the football.
Yeah.
With Chase Edmonds, with James Conner, they're running at above a 5 yards per average clip. And Kyler Murray, 20-28 in this game and 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's just, they're efficient. They are terrifying. They're one of those teams that, much like the Rams offense, or, much like, the Cincinnati offense now, you're just terrified to play them every week because you don't know what you're going to get in terms of any stops from your defense. Kyler Murray and company are just absolutely cruising, and got to give credit to Cliff Kingsbury as well, because they went through a couple bumps in the road to get to the point that they're at, and now they are still the only undefeated team in the NFL.
Yeah, they're not a fake undefeated team anymore. You just can't say that. This is starting to feel real. And the thing about it, scary with them, is they are strong at every position right now, and position groups for the most part. I think adding Zach Ertz is just such another dynamic win for them. Again, I spoke on it last week. It leads to their all-in approach for what they're trying to do for this season. I don't know what the Cardinals will look like in 2 years from now. No idea.
Yeah.
But right now, and you can only talk about right now, they are in a very elite class in the NFC right now. And I think the NFC's got the more favorites to win the Super Bowl than the AFC. And I think you would have felt differently about that 3 weeks ago, but it's just the way these games are playing out, what we're seeing with our own eyes. So kudos to the Cardinals again for winning the games they're supposed to. Their defense is playing really well, and they're running the ball. And that is exactly what you need for long-term success. And they're doing it right now, so then they know they can do it later on in the season. And Kyler can always bail them out because he is magical. Getting home, I'm starting to project this as well. Getting home field advantage for the Cardinals is going to be huge, because we talked about it. Kyler Murray in Lambeau in January, I don't know about that. But Kyler Murray against the Packers in Arizona in January, I don't see there's any reason why they couldn't win that game right now. So getting home field is important for them. I'll say this as well for the Texans really quickly. Glad to see the Tyrod Taylor's coming off IR, hamstring healthy. And for the Texans, I would like to see what kind of fight they start putting up again when Tyrod's back, because I think they could be feisty, a little more feisty, competitive again when Tyrod comes back. Because I think they're a team that will respond to him. There's a lot of veterans on that team, and I think they'll respond to getting Tyrod back for sure.
Finally, we'll go to the Sunday night game, Mark. The Colts in a monsoon.
It was played in. What is the city that sunk underwater?
Atlantis.
Atlantis.
Right?
I mean, this game was like Aquaman.
It was. The Colts end up winning. Somehow they put up 30 points in this game. They won 30-18.
I know.
It was a sloppy game, obviously. And I will say, before we get to the recap, this is just this was wild to me. They kept showing the guy who was drying off the footballs, right? Why in the world is this man not under a tent? He's standing out there in the rain, wiping off the footballs. This seems to be counterproductive, my dude.
Yeah, it does.
What are we doing here?
There's no umbrella. It's not even like they had someone there just holding an umbrella over him.
Yeah, and he's like showing it to the camera. I'm like, they're just constantly getting wet, and you're using wet rags to wipe off the footballs. I don't know. But anyway, each team lost 2 fumbles in this one, but Jimmy G had the 2 interceptions. So San Fran with 4 overall turnovers. And that really seemed to be the difference maker in this one, as Wentz had 2 touchdowns, no picks, although it really should have been a pick, the one that got knocked out, I guess they said, right into the hands of the linebacker there. But regardless, Carson Wentz looked pretty good, and the Colts won a game that they needed to, and now the 49ers are 2-4, and they are looking lost.
Yeah, so I mean, I predicted this one in my upset special, as you saw on Friday on the Facebook post. You just had start this with a preface. I would be very excited if tomorrow it was announced that Kyle Shanahan was the head coach of the Chicago Bears. But what the hell's going on with Kyle Shanahan?
Yeah,
I mean, we have a right to start saying to ourselves, I get it. You've had bad quarterback luck as far as injuries and things like that in your time in San Francisco. But he has a losing record, and a bad losing record in San Francisco right now, except for that miraculous Super Bowl year and that stretch of that season when they first got Jimmy G from New England. Other than that, it's been bad, and like really bad. And the Niners are having a little bit of what Carolina's having. Is Kittle is a massive difference maker for them, but the dude can't stay on the field. And he's in his prime. This isn't like Gronk, where Gronk for 6 years was on the field, battling through injuries, did not miss time, prime. That's why he's a Hall of Famer. And I think you'd argue probably even over Tony Gonzalez, the greatest tight end of all time, because prime Gronk, even though it was a shorter prime, was that dominant. Kittle's prime Kittle, he can put up numbers and be as good as Gronk, but his prime right now is mired with injuries. And so that is a factor in the story of George Kittle, and they're paying him a lot of money, and they just lose that physical attitude. They lose their physicality. Their defense isn't nearly as good without Robert Saleh and the healthy Joey Bosa and all these other pieces. Nick Bosa, excuse me. And so they're a mess. And now I predicted the Niners to not make the playoffs, so I don't have, like you, I don't have that struggle. But again, I guess I had Seattle, and they're a disaster. We'll see what they are tonight without Russell Wilson again. So I'm not going to be too critical on you, because we both have our flubs in the NFC West right now. That. So we both got to eat those sack lunches. And for the Colts, they're starting to get a little momentum, and I will give them some credit. Their offensive head coach, Frank Wright, seems to be over time throwing out some things, reining in other things, and putting together this weird game plan that is working right now. And Carson Wentz is not turning the ball over besides monsoon games. And even in the monsoon games, he's not turning it over as much as you would expect him to. The Colts aren't yet in the plane. They're not on the plane, but the Colts are starting to get frisky, and the schedule's starting to open on up for the Colts. Could get really interesting here. And they're keeping pace with the Titans. Have been hot this 2 weeks in a row. So really fascinating things. And you know what, though? In the end, I watched that game, and I was like, that was fun. It's fun sometimes watching football like that. Baseball would have postponed that game. They obviously, you know what I mean? Soccer, I don't know. I don't watch soccer, so I don't know if they would have postponed it. But that's the NFL. You watch, as long as there ain't lightning, I don't give a crap. Get out there and play. It was fun. It was weird. It was wild. And it was, it was Sunday night. And a good win, great win for the Colts on the road.
It was confusing a little bit to me. If you were to ask me going in, okay, who is best suited for
a rain game?
Less than ideal rain, where you're going to have to rely on the trenches and have to fight through it with physicality? Are you going to pick the Dome Colts or the run-oriented, offensive run game schemed 49ers at home in the rain? And I would think the 49ers win that, 9 times out of 10. The Colts were the more physical team in this one, and that's why they won out. Not just at the line of scrimmage, but Michael Pittman's, catches, the physicality downfield that they were able to, show. That was impressive. And like the Colts now 3-4. I mean, they're at least putting a little bit of pressure on Tennessee. And now it's not as clear that Tennessee's going to run away with this division. The Colts are gaining momentum, and this could really serve them well moving forward. We did forget to mention the bold strategy, Mark, when we got to the Bucks and Bears game. So let's get to that real quick. The bold strategy in that game, of course, we know Tom Brady hit touchdown pass number 600 for his career, first and only quarterback to ever do that. Obviously, a monumental milestone for the future Hall of Famer. It was a touchdown pass to Mike Evans, who subsequently gave that to a fan in the stands. And then that fan gave the football back. So we're talking about now kind of a dual bold strategy for the week, as in Mike Evans giving away his quarterback 600 touchdown pass, and also a fan giving away a potential football worth upwards of 750,000. Some estimates are saying as low as 500,000, but let's just say a pretty penny nonetheless.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
A trip to Disney World and some change, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We can take this a couple different ways. My instant thought with this was that dude's an idiot. And I like you. I don't root for a team that would ever have a quarterback that would ever throw a milestone touchdown pass. So I don't really have to ever really think about being in this scenario. But if I was in that scenario, you get a ball like that and the murmurs in the stadium immediately go to, that's the 600 ball. You get out of your seat, you grab your buddy, and you say, we're getting the bleep out of here. And I would immediately call my lawyer. I'd be like, you're taking all these calls. I want $1 million. That's the starting point. That's where my negotiations start. And let's talk. I'd be in a bunker somewhere. I'd be like Obama watching, Osama bin Laden get, killed, or, I'd be bunkered in. I'd be all eyes on $1 million. And I'd say, Tom, you and Giselle can spare it. NFL Hall of Fame, you want this ball? You better put the sack of money on the table. And, but otherwise, I would say the other thing is, I don't blame Mike Evans at all. That's on Tom Brady for making sure all those people know. Don't give it. Someone else should have been all their ears saying today, especially at the way the game was going by the first quarter, like the second touchdown. Guys, he's going to break the record. Any ball you catch, you hold it. I never blame, just like I was saying, DK Metcalf with that stupid out of bounds thing. You know what I mean? It not necessarily his fault. Russell Wilson would have helped him say, you got to get out of bounds, whatever. Wide receivers are just there to catch balls, make plays, be fancy, show their chains. That's what wide receivers are there for. So I think it's so stupid of that guy to give up. I think he got like a gift card, some stuff. He didn't walk away empty-handed. That dude could have walked away with probably $100,000 at least, if he had just ran out the stadium with that ball.
See, we think about this differently because, yeah, maybe he would have, but he would have walked away with no integrity as well as being a fan of said team. Look, he did zero things to earn that. He got lucky. He got lucky that he was in that spot and that Mike Evans gave him the football. He didn't do anything to earn $500,000. He just got lucky. And so at the end of the day, I think what he's doing is, okay, I'm just going to be a good human and I'm not going to hold this hostage and say, oh, Tom, you want your ball back? You're going to have to give me $1 million. I think that's kind of douchey.
Very douchey.
It was
very, very douchey.
Wasn't it with the Barry Bonds home run ball that the guy gave it back to him right away? Or it was either that or it was something. It was something in a major baseball game where someone did that too. And that guy got heaped praise on because of just how good it was. And he did receive rewards for being a good individual. So I think at the end of the day, yeah, maybe you're not going to get compensated like you would if you kept the ball. But you get to say I'm not a douche and I still got, compensated for that.
True.
I think he got $1,000 gift card and Tom, I'm sure, is going to send him.
There's a signed jersey involved.
Yeah.
There's some other stuff. I
Look,
think.
if Tom gives him 10 signed jerseys, I mean, those alone could be worth, a significant amount. Or, maybe Tom finds a way to be like, I'll hook you up with something on the side or whatever it is, just for being a good dude. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I viewed it.
He's got a great story to tell. I get it.
Yeah.
There
was someone out there though saying that you can't authenticate. That guy wouldn't have been able to authenticate the ball anyway. I'm like, What? Yes, he
He
would
was
have.
literally in the stand.
We have the video footage. You
Yeah.
can show that to anybody. Stuff like that gets authenticated all the time. So that was a bad reasoning for
Bad
anyone
take.
who's making that argument. But,
Dan Vasco one time said to me in high school, "It's because you have no morals." And as we know, here we
That's
are
right.
13 years later. It's because I have no morals.
Yeah,
I would
that's
have taken, you know what? I would have taken my money. I would have bought season tickets to my favorite team, and I would have been sitting pretty, and I would have been very okay with it.
You'd have to have security detail with you, but you could afford it. So
You could.
that'd be fine.
You could.
That'd be fine at that point. All right, Mark. Well, as we wrap up the show, I guess, do you want to give us a update on your Super Bowl playing? Anything changed this
Yeah. Do you want to
week?
do Monday Night Football quickly first?
Yeah,
or,
sure.
And then we can go to the plane because there are some changes.
Yeah, we could do that. Saints at the Seahawks tonight in Seattle. There, the Seahawks 2-4. Obviously, they are very much in need of a win here. The Saints trying to stay on track. Right now, the Saints are favored by 4, so -4 for New Orleans on the road against Seattle. Your thoughts on this one? Over under 41.5 too. So obviously on the lower end for two teams that are struggling. But
love the Saints in this game. I think Jameis has a great game. I think that whatever bump you've gotten from, hey, we got Geno in and blah blah blah, it's all gone now. It's all gone now, especially that loss to the Steelers. I think that this is where you start to see some real deficiencies in Seattle and other places that Russell Wilson used to cover on up. Saints team is got a very good defense still. They have playmakers in the outside. I love the Saints in this spot to win and probably to cover that as well. I think it's a pretty boring game. I think Geno makes a couple big mistakes, and I hope maybe he proves me wrong and they're able to stay in the playoff picture. But I think you're going to see a New Orleans team take a step forward and saying, hey, we are putting ourselves firmly in one of these wild card spots. And I think the New Orleans has an opportunity to assert that in the NFC right now. If you look at the standings with a win tonight. So I think they see that and they understand that as well. These wild card spots are opening on up. Packers running away with their division. Bucks running away with their division. Cowboys running away with their division. All the other teams in those divisions struggling right now. Then you have the Rams and the Cardinals. One of those two teams going to win it. You have two other wild card spots. The Saints could firmly put themselves on pace for one of those with a nice win in Seattle night. So I'll take the Saints.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as well. I think Jameis has a big game in this one too. I do think that the Seahawks make this a competitive match though, because it's so pivotal for them. They're at home. You know, they haven't won a home game yet this season. That's rare for Seattle to go on an 0-3 streak at home. So while I do think the Saints are going to end up pulling this one out, I'm still scared to even take 4 points, even though it's a small spread. I think it could come down to a field goal late in this one or something like that. But I would take the Saints defense against the Seahawks offense versus the other way around, because I think New Orleans just has a lot for Seattle to have to worry about when it comes to Jameis, Marquez Callaway, Kamara. So there's just a lot more concerns I'd have for, Seattle's defense being able to stop New Orleans. So yeah, I would take the Saints here. That would move them to 4-2, and they'd have something to say about that playoff race as well.
I will say this. If you want, they just released the Manning cast schedule tonight. Tom Brady will be joining Peyton and Eli on the Manning.
Is that
cast.
right? He's coming out because I saw Drew Brees.
Marshawn Lynch, quarter 1. Tom Brady, quarter 2. I can't remember quarter 3, but quarter 4 is Drew Brees.
Okay.
So what a lineup. Marshawn
Fantastic.
Lynch, take care of your mentals, take care of your chickens. Marshawn Lynch, and then Tom Brady.
I just hope Marshawn Lynch is not there to not be fined. Because that was his classic
the double
line.
birds as well. I hope he gives the double birds.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And maybe some Skittles will make an appearance there as well.
There you go.
All right, good stuff. Well, yeah, looking forward to that. And week 8, hopefully that impresses a little bit more than this past week, a little bit underwhelming. But nonetheless, it is the NFL, and that happens sometimes. So your Super Bowl playing after this week, I'm excited to see kind of what shift has come here on the plane as it takes off. It's taking off from New York this time?
It's leaving New York and headed to Philly, the city of lights, And I'll say this. To me, what's become very clear when I do the Super Bowl playing is that I right now have a lot more faith in NFC teams, the top of the NFC, to be like, that team could win the Super Bowl, than I do the AFC. The AFC, they're kind of chewing each other up right now and spitting each other out. The Titans beating the Bills, and the Titans beating the Chiefs, but the Bills beating the Chiefs. And then, there's just this kind of mess at the top right now with some of those teams. So I feel more clarity in the NFC. So in the first class, there's only now 5 teams first class, and that is the Packers, the Bucks, the Rams, the Cardinals. Those from the NFC. And the one AFC team I'm keeping is the Bills. They want to bye this week after losing a tough game at a Josh Allen foot slip game in Tennessee now against the Titans team that's playing really good football. So I'm not going to knock them too hard. They have to bye. We'll see how they come back and bounce back after that loss. I still right now what I'm telling the listeners is in the AFC right now, the team I trust the most would be Josh Allen and the Bills. I've seen them play Tennessee really competitively to win the good game in Kansas City, kind of take that monkey off their back. They can put up points at will. I trust Josh Allen right now. In the business class, again, business class are teams that I'm like, this team can win multiple playoff games, but I just don't know right now if I can see them hosting Lombardi. The Ravens are the team I dropped down from first class last week, and they end up in business class. I say this, and I mentioned it when we do the recap. You lose at home that way against a little brother, that's concerning. If they would have lost close and it's a big mistake or just a monster game from a Joe Burrow or something, I probably would have kept them in first class. But they got punched in the mouth. And the Ravens are usually a team that punch in the mouth, and they had no punch in them against little brother. That's concerning. I put the Bengals in business class as well, because if the Bengals can punch like that and their offense keeps humming like this, they can win multiple, at least 1 or maybe 2 playoff games. The Titans have to be in business class after their last 2 weeks. They join the Cowboys is the only NFC team in business class. Again, Cowboys just don't know yet exactly what the bite is with the Cowboys. They can score. Their defense is playing really well. I just don't yet trust the Cowboys fully to be in Green Bay, in Tampa, in LA, winning those games, or even hosting in LA, hosting in Tampa, hosting Green Bay, and getting to the Super Bowl. Chargers, I will keep in business class, barely hanging on. They're in a bye. I can't dock them. They were in business class last week. And again, I think the Chargers, if things line up really well, if they win the division, they host a playoff game right now. It looks like they could. I trust them at home right now hosting a playoff game. And then finally, stand by Raiders and Chiefs. I keep the Chiefs in, but they are hanging up by a thread. And the Raiders, I think, deserve to be in standby after riding this ship 2 wins in a row after the John Gruden firing. Standby means they're going to make the playoffs right now, in my estimation. I don't see them necessarily winning a playoff game, but I think they're a playoff team. The Raiders and the Chiefs, I still feel like are playoff teams. None other NFC teams. So the top of the NFC, I love. The rest of the NFC, I just don't know. And it's kind of the opposite with the AFC. The AFC, there's a lot of teams I like to be in the playoffs and maybe win a game or 2, but the Bills are the only team I could see being in the Super Bowl and possibly hosting a Lombardi from the AFC right now.
Gotcha. I would probably throw, I know it's a beatdown, so it's hard to give them the nod there, but I still feel very confident in the Ravens to bounce back. I mean, they lost to a really good Bengals team, and I just can see them bouncing back quickly and being dominant yet again.
I'll give them that. That's why I didn't dock them too hard. I agree with you. I think but they deserve to be knocked out of first class. They don't get the free champagne after little brother literally puts your head in the dog bowl in front of your parents. And it's like, what's going on here? I'm not going to help you. You can fight back against little brother, and you just limped your way off the field. I don't know. You just don't get the free champagne of first class after that. Not in a first class flight to Philly. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I hear you.
City that never sleeps, Philly. You can't do it.
That yeah, we're just gonna throw the Windy City. Might as well throw the Windy City in there.
It is very windy.
Everything.
It
Philly has
City
everything.
by the lake. The city by the lake.
Yeah. By the way, we have a great Thursday night game, man. The Packers at the Cardinals. So should be a really good one.
Really?
Yeah.
Packers at Cardinals?
Yeah, it's a big Thursday night game this week.
No rehearsal for me.
6-1,
Thursday
7-0.
night.
Oh,
That,
nice.
dude,
There you go.
That's huge. That could be. I mean, we're talking playoff.
Talk about having those tiebreakers.
Yeah.
For that one seed. That
Rams
very well could come back.
Rams fans gonna be wearing cheese heads on Thursday nights. That's for sure.
No question. That wraps up the Week 7 recap. Real quick, I just got to say this. This doesn't have to do with football, but I need a place to just say this because it's very depressing. The Blackhawks, Mark, are 0-5-1 to start the year.
They set an NHL record.
An NHL record. They've played 360 minutes of hockey and have not had a lead for a single second.
What happened
that entire time? That is courtesy of Barstool Chief. I can't figure it out, man. Like they're just the offense, which is what should have been the major strength of this team. And then they added one of the best defensemen in the league in the offseason. They add a perennial, future Hall of Fame goalie in Marc-Andre Fleury. It's mind-boggling. I mean, one defenseman's not going to solve the problems, and clearly they can't stop a nosebleed right now. And that is just brutal. I mean, they let up 6 goals last night. But yeah, I just had to vent that out.
I get it.
Because setting an NHL record like that when the expectations were so much higher this year, it's brutal, man.
Focus on the 3-0 Bulls. They're in Toronto tonight.
The Bulls have been looking very good. And, how about Caruso?
Hey, I can't watch how old the Lakers look. Letting a guy like him go is a mistake.
It was a mistake, especially someone that they didn't have to. It's not like
he's happy in his role, and the Bulls paid him, and it's working because he's the new bench mob with him and Kobe White, and they really are something fun to watch right now.
A force to be reckoned with, no question about it. The MVP chance he was getting too, that was pretty funny. So why not? All right, that does it for us here in Week 7 recap. Enjoy the Sunday Night Football. Enjoy that phenomenal Thursday night game, Packers and Cardinals. Hopefully it's not like a 10-3 game. I can't imagine it will be, but we'll see. Crazier things have happened. Until next week, have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you back here soon.